Welcome to Fairview Park's celebration of California Biodiversity Day. We are celebrating the incredible biodiversity that exists in our state and in our own backyard in Costa Mesa. But what is biodiversity? Biodiversity is the variability of life on Earth. It is made up of different types of diversity, including genetic diversity, species diversity, and ecosystem diversity. Why is biodiversity important? One reason is that biodiversity is critical to the survival of our own species. Biodiversity provides us with food and medicine. It provides services to us like pollination, water filtration, pest control, and climate regulation. Aside from what biodiversity provides to humans, it also has intrinsic value. This means that the existence of these species and ecosystems is valuable and deserves to exist independent of what they can provide for us. California is home to more species of plants and animals than any other state in the U.S. California also has the highest number of endemic species out of any state, meaning that these species are found nowhere else. It is also one of 36 global biodiversity hotspots, being one of the most biodiverse regions in the world. The combination of ecosystems due to varying landscapes is responsible for such high biodiversity. California has mountains, coasts, deserts, and more, which all host different species of plants and animals. Similarly, Fairview Park's combination of riparian habitats, coastal sage scrub, grasslands, and vernal pools is unique in Orange County and rare anywhere in Southern California. This makes Fairview Park an ecologically important regional biodiversity hub. There have been at least 117 native plant species and 222 native bird species documented in the park. There are at least 26 special status species at the park, ranging from plants to birds to invertebrates. Start your walk to learn more about these unique habitats and species that make up Fairview Park. The walk will be approximately 2 miles, but if you would like a shorter walk, you can do the alternative route on the map. Welcome to our first stop, where we will be learning about coastal sage scrub. Coastal sage scrub is a vegetation community that is characterized by having low-growing aromatic plants with waxy leaves. Plants that are typical of this habitat are California sagebrush, bush sunflower, lemonade berry, coastal goldenbush, California buckwheat, and many more. The plants of CSS are adapted to our climate of hot, dry summers and wet winters. They retain water and reduce sun exposure during drought conditions. Many of them are drought deciduous, which means that they drop their leaves and go dormant when water is scarce. For this reason, many of them may look like they're not alive, but as soon as there is moisture, they will come back to life. Another example of an adaptation is the leaves of the laurel sumac, which fold up under intense sun, giving the plant its nickname of the taco plant. Some plants are also seasonally dimorphic, meaning that the plant takes two different forms depending on the season. For example, bush sunflower has smaller leaves during the summer months to preserve water and reduce sun exposure. In the winter, they have larger leaves to absorb more sunlight. The plants of CSS have an extensive, shallow root system that allows them to take advantage of any moisture in the soil. This allows them to survive drought conditions and regrow once water is available again. These roots also prevent soil erosion. CSS is also adapted to fire. The root crowns and stems can resprout after a fire, and some species seeds even require fire to break down the exterior in order to germinate. Coastal sage scrub has been reduced to only 10 to 30% of its historical range due to it occurring on prime, high-value coastal land that is popular for development. The California gnatcatcher has been impacted by this loss in habitat as it lives and nests exclusively in CSS. The bird is now federally protected, which has resulted in the preservation of some of the remaining CSS. The gnatcatcher has benefited from the CSS restoration projects at Fairview Park and has been documented nesting in these areas, marking the success of these projects. The plants of CSS provide great habitat for several species of reptiles, birds, mammals, and insects. It is particularly important for native bumblebees, which have been declining in population in part due to habitat loss. One Fairview Park species, the Crotch's bumblebee, is now a candidate for listing under the California Endangered Species Act. At Fairview Park, bumblebees can be seen enjoying the different sage species and California buckwheat as habitat to forage and nest in. Native bumblebee species are important to protect because they have evolved alongside native plants, making them specially adapted and effective at pollinating them. An example of this is their ability to buzz pollinate. Plants are the producers of the food chain, meaning that they are at the base of every food chain. Because of the role they play in plant reproduction, loss of native bumblebees can have significant ecological impacts. So as you can see, whether it's the California sagebrush providing nesting habitat for the California gnatcatcher or the Sonoran bumblebee pollinating that sagebrush so that it can reproduce, each species in this community plays an important role. The habitat in front of you is coastal sage scrub. Before moving on to the next stop, take a minute to observe the plant and animal species that you see using the site and the different adaptations that they may have to thrive in this type of habitat. Welcome to our second stop, where we will be learning about threats to biodiversity. One of the biggest threats are invasive species. An invasive species is one that is non-native and causes or is likely to cause harm to the environment, economy, and/or human health. They spread through human activity, through people's shoes, firewood, ships, crates, and pet releases. For example, if you travel to another country and go hiking, then hike at home with the same boots, you may unintentionally bring back seeds that have stuck to your boot. Invasive species can have many detrimental impacts on native habitats, including decrease in biodiversity overall, decrease in native species due to resource competition, altering habitats, predation, and other ecological relationships, altering soil composition, carbon sequestration, and nitrogen cycles. At Fairview Park, one of the most notorious invasive plant species is mustard, which you can see has taken over this habitat in front of you. It is an aggressive invasive species. It grows fast and tall, blocking sunlight and competing for other resources with native plants. When you look around, you will see they often create fields or monocultures, reducing diversity in the ecosystem. When they dry, they are also highly flammable, increasing fire risks. It also changes soil composition through allelochemicals they release, making it harder for natives to grow. This is one of the main plants that habitat restoration at Fairview Park aims to remove to make way for native plants. They are extremely difficult to eradicate as they release seeds every year and build up the seed bank, so they continue to grow, but to a much lesser degree after a restoration project is mature. Another example of an invasive species is the brown-headed cowbird. This bird has a parasitic relationship with the federally and state endangered least Bell's vireo and other native birds. They lay their eggs in the nests of other bird species, making the host bird incubate the eggs and raise their chicks. This is damaging to the host bird species because their own chicks have lowered survival rates as a result. An example of an invasive insect species is the shot-hole borer beetle. These beetles bore into native tree species such as sycamores, willows, oaks, and more. When they bore in, they introduce a fungus that causes the trees to die back. This has caused significant damage to trees in Southern California. According to a Los Angeles Times article from 2017, they could kill as many as 27 million trees in LA, Orange, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties, which amounts to 38% of all trees in this region. Another huge threat to biodiversity at Fairview Park is human activity that degrades the habitat. Park users often unknowingly go off trail, let their dogs off leash, and into habitat. Many don't know the damage that this can cause. Social trails at the park fragments habitat and devegetates areas of the park. Having continuous habitat is very important for native species and for increasing biodiversity. Different species inhabit different areas of a swath of land, depending on how close to the edge they like to be. Fragmenting habitat results in more edge species and less space for species that like to stay on the interior. It also impacts population sizes and opens species up to more disturbance. Dogs off leash can be a disturbance to native species as well, especially when they run into habitats. They may run through vegetation that has nesting birds, they might disturb native vegetation, or try to hunt native animal species. Although going off trail and having your dog off leash may seem harmless, there are many impacts to the ecosystem. These are just some examples of threats to native species and biodiversity. You can help to minimize your impact when visiting Fairview Park by staying on designated trails and following all posted rules. Trail maps can be found on the city website. You can help to combat invasive species by joining community-based restoration projects at Fairview Park or any nature park near you. At Fairview Park, there are several options for volunteering on both weekday and weekend mornings. All information is listed on the city website. Welcome to our third stop of the tour, where we will be learning about the woodlands and wetland ponds of Fairview Park. Wetlands are some of the most productive and diverse ecosystems in the world. They compare to rainforests and coral reefs in their productivity and biodiversity. This is because they contain a unique mix of habitats with varying levels of water, high levels of nutrients, and high plant production, which provides resources for species that form the base of the food chain. The wetlands at Fairview Park include the wetland pond themselves, the surrounding woodlands, and some coastal sage scrub. These different habitats support different species at every level of the food chain, including microbes, plants, insects, reptiles, birds, fish, amphibians, and mammals. An example of one of these plant species are the cattails that you see in the ponds. They are specially adapted to withstand waterlogged soils with low oxygen. They have spongy tissue that allows them to exchange oxygen from the leaves to the roots of the plant. They act as a natural filtration system, helping to clean water before it goes back into the ground or the ocean. Decomposing cattails serve as a home for dragonfly and damselfly nymphs, who use the cattails to camouflage themselves or rest as they look for prey. Adult damselflies and dragonflies use them to lay eggs in or perch while they hunt. Several bird species also use the cover of the cattails to nest safely from predators, or use the cattails themselves to weave their nests. This is just one example of how just one species can have several ecological functions and support a variety of other species. In California, approximately 90% of historic wetlands have been lost to agriculture, development, and climate change. This means that all the species that depend on wetlands have also declined, with some becoming endangered or threatened. The southwestern pond turtle is one of these species. They live in the Fairview Park wetlands and feast on the insects, snails, and aquatic plants. At Fairview Park, several special status bird species are also supported by the wetlands. The state and federally endangered Leisbell's vireo lives and nests in the habitat. The state and federally endangered California least tern uses the ponds to hunt for fish. The species of special concern, the yellow-breasted chat, also calls the wetland home. Many other species of birds rely on the wetlands as a source of food due to the amount of insects, fish, and other creatures that inhabit them. They also use the wetland for shelter year-round, but especially during migration and nesting season. These examples show just a glimpse of life and activity that is supported by the Fairview Park wetlands and why wetlands are so critical to biodiversity. Before moving on to our next tour stop, make sure to take a look around at the different species that are using the wetlands habitat at Fairview Park. What insects, birds, and plants can you spot before going on to the next stop? Before moving on to our next tour stop, be sure to take a moment and appreciate the abundance of species that currently surround you. Take a moment to observe the different insects, birds, and plant species that inhabit the Fairview Park wetlands. Welcome to our fourth stop, where we will be learning about the unique vernal pool habitat at Fairview Park. Vernal pools are a rare ecosystem that we are lucky to have here in the city of Costa Mesa. Vernal pools are depressions in the land that at Fairview Park have a hard layer of clay soil underneath. When there is heavy rain, this layer of clay expands and seals, no longer allowing water to drain and creating a pond. They are full until water fully evaporates in the summer. As the pools fill, they begin teeming with life that is adapted to the unique ephemeral nature of the pools. Two of the endangered species that inhabit the pools at Fairview Park are the San Diego fairy shrimp and Riverside fairy shrimp. They are endemic to vernal pools, meaning that they don't live in any other type of habitat. These tiny shrimp lay hard cysts or eggs in the soil that can lay dormant for at least a decade. The pools don't fill on a yearly basis, so the cysts lay in wait and only hatch when the pools fill again. Once they hatch, the shrimp have a very short life cycle to ensure that they can complete it before the pond dries up. They reach maturity and begin reproducing within 14 days. The shrimp, along with the insects and amphibians that the ponds attract, provide an excellent food source for migrating birds. The wet conditions of the ponds create habitat for amphibians such as the Pacific chorus frog and western toad. When the pools are full, you will see more diversity in bird species using the mesa of the park. Some of the species you may see include the black-necked stilt, the marbled godwit, greater yellowlegs, and more. The vernal pools at Fairview Park also support several special status plant species, some of which are endemic to vernal pools. These plants include the federally and state endangered species California orcuts grass and San Diego button celery. These species are specially adapted to vernal pool habitat, allowing them to tolerate both flood and drought. Their seeds, similar to the fairy shrimp cysts, can lay dormant for several years until enough water is present for them to germinate. Vernal pools occur on flat land, and when they are dry, they don't look like much unless you know what to look for. Because of this, the land often seems perfect for agriculture and development. According to the EPA, more than 90% of vernal pools in California have been lost. They are now protected by state and federal laws. These protections are important because if vernal pools continue to disappear, the species that are endemic to them would disappear along with them, reducing biodiversity as a whole. While state and federal protections exist, it is also up to Fairview Park users to protect this habitat by staying on trail, following posted rules, keeping dogs on leash, and picking up after themselves. Even when the pools are dry, the dormant seeds and cysts must be protected to ensure the health of the vernal pools once they receive enough rainfall for these species to come to life. We are lucky to have such a unique ecosystem in Costa Mesa, so let's do our part to protect it. At our fifth stop, we will be talking about the value of habitat restoration. Habitat restoration is very important to increasing and protecting biodiversity. It can take a piece of land that has been degraded and transform it into a healthy ecosystem that supports a wider range of species. The process of habitat restoration includes site preparation, which means removing any invasive and non-native species. Next, the site is planted with container plants and seeded. The restoration plan will determine which species of plants will be used depending on the habitat type. Often, a restoration project is also targeting a specific wildlife species, and the restoration plan will be tailored to include plants that will attract and support that species. Although a specific species is often targeted, restoring any degraded land to native vegetation will attract a wide range of native wildlife species. Habitat restoration also increases habitat connectivity, which allows more movement for wildlife, strengthening their populations and genetic diversity. The site in front of you is a great example of habitat restoration. Prior to restoration, the site had been degraded and the 3 vernal pools inside of it were damaged. This restoration project was started in 2019. The site was prepared by removing non-native plants and grass turf and grading and recontouring the vernal pools. The pools were also inoculated with endangered San Diego fairy shrimp cysts, which were taken from another pool at the park and placed in these pools. An irrigation system was also installed, and site preparation ended in fall of 2022. At the beginning of 2023, the site planting began with an initial 763 plants installed throughout the site and many pounds of seeds spread. Since then, more planting days have occurred, resulting in over 1,200 plants installed in the site. The site has also been maintained by city staff and volunteers who work hard to remove non-native species as they come up. The first year after planting, the site had only 46% native plant coverage and 41% non-native coverage. The most recent vegetation monitoring data shows that it now has 61% native plant coverage and 25% non-native coverage. This transformation in vegetation has attracted an array of wildlife species as well. City staff has spotted many insects like butterflies, bumblebees, caterpillars, and even a tarantula hawk using the site. Snakes, toads, and frogs have also made a home of the site. This has attracted a variety of bird species who feed on those insects and smaller wildlife, with some even nesting in the site. Birds such as the white-tailed kite, who used to hunt only on some areas of the mesa, has extended its hunting ground to include this site. The vernal pools are also monitored for San Diego fairy shrimp, and since the start of the project, they have been confirmed to be reproducing in these pools. This marked the success of the project because the target endangered species now has a self-sustaining population. While this site is still in progress and the maintenance phase will continue for a couple more years, the progress made already demonstrates the value of habitat restoration. A site that previously was dominated by non-native species and degraded is now a thriving ecosystem with more species using it, including special status species. As mentioned, some of this work was done by community volunteers who find it rewarding to watch their work transform a degraded site into a healthy habitat. If you would like to get involved in restoring Fairview Park, there are many opportunities to do so on both weekday and weekend mornings. Check out the City of Costa Mesa website or email cmrecinfo@costamesaca.gov for more information on volunteer opportunities. Before wrapping up your tour, make sure to take a moment to appreciate the hard work that has gone into restoring the site by observing the different species that call it home. Thank you for joining us today to learn about California and Fairview Park biodiversity. We hope this tour has given you a greater understanding of how unique Fairview Park is and why it's so important to continue habitat restoration and protection of the species that live here. The site in front of you is the newest community-based restoration site. We are currently in the site preparation phase, and volunteers have already been hard at work removing invasive mustard plants and construction debris that is buried under the soil. We hope to start planting the site during the upcoming rainy season. Get involved in our Habitat Restoration Volunteer Days to be a part of this work, or come visit the park and witness the transformation of the site over time, making sure to stay on trail and follow park rules. We all have a part in protecting and enhancing our state's biodiversity, and we hope you find yours.